Stuart.
Hey, Jill.
How are you?
Good. 2025. This is the first time we've sat down since the new year, and a lot's happened.
Lots happened, and also I kept trying to find the light. My mantra that I came up with was, hearts and minds can be transformed. Anything is possible, and all we can count on is change.
Yeah, it is a really interesting situation because it's like, I guess on one hand, we've developed this really like toxic relationship with politics where
Right.
you almost like just sitting here now talking about this. I'm like, oh, do I say if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to be attacked. And that's not good. Like we shouldn't be in that situation.
No.
So I'm trying to approach this administration with a very, open mind and objective, slow, intentional pace. Because I don't want to just be reactionary and just say, oh, well, it came from Trump, therefore it's X, Y, or Z. I want to actually look at it and make a determination. And so one of the things that I've done is I've read the energy executive order. So he signed an executive order on Inauguration Day, among others. And this frames energy development in terms of a national
Energy emergency?
Security emergency, yeah.
Energy or security
Well,
emergency?
it frames energy development as a national security emergency.
Right.
And, there are some things in that executive order that I either agree with or I have a hard time arguing with.
Okay.
Energy is critical for national security.
Right.
You can't really argue with that. The idea that our current energy infrastructure is inadequate, I agree with that. And people who are really into renewables should agree with that because it's not really set up for renewables. So, I may not agree with what they end up concluding is like the solution to that problem, but I agree that it's a problem. But there were three issues about the executive order that I thought were pretty troubling and that we should be paying attention to. The first is just the framing of it as a national emergency kind of grants the government sweeping authority to use eminent domain in ways that they haven't really used it in energy to date, and they are relying on the Defense Production Act, which is like a wartime law meant to coordinate manufacturing around a war. Mm-hmm. And so by doing that,
meaning declaring an energy emergency, and it's a security threat to our nation.
Yeah, they're kind of framing it as if it's like a
wartime
kind of situation.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they're going to be able to circumvent a lot of the safeguards, the environmental safeguards, regulations. They're going to be able to fast track permitting, and they're going to be able to essentially push through energy projects in ways that, they weren't able to before.
But here's where I just want to make a point. Property rights, conservatives, like a lot of them supposedly are drill baby drill. How happy are the conservatives going to be about having no say really what happens to your property if it's deemed necessary for what? A fracking well or a pipeline or compressor station, whatever it could be. Anyway, I'll stop there. That seems problematic.
It is, and rural conservatives are often the people who are kind of in the crosshairs of the industries. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are most in these situations, and up until now, you've had to at least have the cooperation of the landowner to sign the lease, to sign away the rights to the resources. And that's true of timbering and strip mining and oil and gas and everything. Well, the way that this law is written, and by the way, I'm not a legal scholar, but the way that it reads to me is that this is going to allow energy companies to appeal to the Department of Energy if they want to frack a piece of land, for example, where the landowner doesn't want fracking, and basically force it on the landowner.
But we already kind of have that with forced unitization or forced pooling, where in the state of Ohio, if they get 65% of the landowners that they need to sign a lease to be in their unit, they petition ODNR and they force the other 35% into a lease. But this is different in the sense of, see where I mean?
Well, yeah,
there's no trial. You don't get a hearing. You don't get to voice your concerns, even though they don't even listen to them. Like, I'm just curious,
so
what's...
Hypothetically, they could bring under this executive order, because of the way they're framing it as a national security emergency, hypothetically, they could bring the army in to push you off your land to frack. I don't think that they would ever go that far, but that's the amount of overreach that seems to be written into the executive order that is concerning.
I'm just getting a huge flashback of driving on this village road on the way to Bob Marley's home in the heart of Jamaica, St. Anne's Parish. And I look, around a turn, and over here, they're like bauxite mining, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my God, there's mining in Jamaica too. But what I was told is, if you live in Jamaica and the bauxite companies or the government says, oh, we're putting a mine here, you just get kicked off, and you don't get any compensation. They just take your home, and that's it. I mean, that was, that's what I was told. I didn't investigate it, but that was, 20 years ago. But I'm just saying that's what I immediately thought of. Like, that's what happens in third world countries,
Yeah, and you're right, because to get back to the conservatives, it is an issue. Like, conservatives hold private property rights pretty near and dear. I mean, it's almost like up there with the Second Amendment. And by the way, I do too.
Mm-hmm.
I think property rights I don't think eminent domain should exist, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my opinion. So the fact that they're essentially crafting a scenario where eminent domain, which is used primarily for large-scale public use projects like freeways and things.
Okay.
They're crafting this in a way that it will now basically be a tool that private entities can use. That's pretty disturbing.
I heard Trump speak about these things to a certain level, a little bit. And he was framing it as, first statement was like, we're going to, that whole energy independence, which they sold fracking on, the oil and gas industry has been saying that forever. But Trump kind of insinuated, along with national security, where we need to get free from needing our resources from other places. Like, we're going to fill up our reserves. Drill, baby, drill, open everything up, fill up our reserves, improve our infrastructure, and then export it and sell it to the world. I mean, if we had reserves and I think I get that. Yeah, that makes sense if that's what we were doing. And then we're using all of our own stuff and everything's taken care of. Of course, if we're using it to transition or, discover the technology to get off of it completely, right? Anyway, now I could just go on and on.
I mean, I agree. True energy independence is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we shouldn't be importing it. But the other issue, so the eminent domain is one issue, then the Defense Production Act is the other issue. So now you have eminent domain forcing you to frack, for example. You go and challenge it at the court. They appeal to the Defense Production Act. And it basically, my understanding is that it fast tracks it and kind of negates your court challenge because it's a defense issue. So it doesn't really leave landowners any opportunity to really challenge it. Now, we would have to check that with an attorney, but that's the way that I've read it. So you have sort of the property rights issue.
Yeah.
And you have the framing of it as a national security emergency. The other issue is the environmental regulations component. they really spell out in it pretty clearly that they are going to be very loose with the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act. And they are going to make it very easy for companies, I think, to sidestep or get around those kinds of regulations that are there to protect our drinking water and our habitats and everything. Mm-hmm. And then the third issue is it speaks about energy pretty broadly, like you could apply it to wind farms or solar farms, but it's the tone of it plus the tone of the administration is pretty clearly like about oil and gas and the expansion of natural gas and fracking development. And they want to fold in federal lands to that expansion. So that means potentially national parks, state parks, wildlife preserves, wetlands.
And that's already, they've already leased to wildlife areas and state parks in Ohio. So
yeah, they've done it. It's not brand new, but I think it's been more restricted and like harder for companies to access those lands. And
oh yeah, we stopped them for like 10 years or something. And they tried to do it immediately, but enough people got together all over the state and you know.
And so now it just seems like the gates are going to be wide open. And none of this is really surprising. Chris Wright, who is Donald Trump's appointment for the Department of Energy, is a fracking CEO. And Doug Burgum, who is a longtime advocate for oil and gas development, is the appointment for the Secretary of Interior. So it was kind of like the writing was on the wall, but now it's like officially in writing. And I think the fact that this executive order was already drafted and ready to be signed on Inauguration Day really shows like where the priorities are for the administration.
I guess for me, living in the most heavily fracked part of Ohio, Belmont County, I don't know what to do with any of this. Like once again, like if I could afford to leave, I would not be living here. But then I can't waste my time, and nothing I've done up to this point in any of my advocacy. I mean, maybe there's something, but in general, like I'm happy to be where I am. I think it's been worthwhile, but I do think it's time to like gather the minds and be very strategic, but clear, like what's the best use? Where do we put our energy? Like, but this conversation's helping. I mean, you have to be based in reality. You know, you have to understand the landscape. But then I think we might just have to learn how to play the game a little differently. You know, new approaches. You know.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, where it's like, I don't want to be a reactionary about it. I don't want to be like, this is the sky's falling, this is the end of the world, because like I said, there's things in there that I agree with, and I want to take those things and use them as opportunities to talk to policymakers and maybe influence and shape how that goes. I mean, that's all you can do for the next 4 years. This is the administration, and it is a complete waste of time and energy to just continue to like rant and rave about that.
Right. But I also think exposure and continuing to reveal the truth that we're basically collateral damage. Like living here, living in the shale fields, living in Appalachia, New Mexico. I mean, there's wherever fracking is in the United States, we can be considered collateral damage. I mean, the externalizing the costs. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, I can't accept that, but it is the truth. Like, drill, baby, drill, and everybody cheers. Well, that's because partly, like, maybe some of it's staged. But I know people who they're oblivious. They don't care. I mean, energy is I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe they don't know what it really means and what it looks like, and that they're building frac pads right next to daycares, and I don't know. That's all I keep saying. I don't know.
I mean, I think there's this. It go like with that toxic culture that we've created around politics, I think the people who get the most attention and create the most noise are these really like binary individuals. But I think when you actually like can get past them and talk to people, whether they're in the industry or in politics, you find that there's a lot more diversity than you realize. You know, I was telling you before we sat down, I just had a good conversation with a freshman Republican congressman in Pennsylvania about these issues. And he was not dismissive. You know, he listened, and he was like, yeah, I'm a conservative. I'm a conservationist. You know, I believe in the environment. I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. And there's reasons for that, but I don't believe that companies should just be able to do whatever they want. And I think that he learned some things in our conversation that he will take with him. You know, what he does with them, I don't know, but that's all I can do.
Right.
You know, all I can do is plant the seeds but you know, the big takeaway for me is that we do have a really toxic culture around politics and policy, and we really need to get through that. Because the same is true on the other side. Like, there's this trope or the stereotype of environmentalists that's not really true. When you actually get into those circles of people, yeah, you find the people who fit the stereotype.
Tree hugger, like.
But there's a lot
hippie.
of other people in there, like attorneys and scientists and
Right.
conservatives and doctors and hunters, and it is a diverse group. And I think we need to stop painting each other as these really simplified binary groups of people, because then you can't really ever get to the conversation that really matters.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's why, even for me, when I was saying conservative, I don't even like using those terms. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, the people who, I mean, you know what I mean? I just want to be able to speak the truth, but I guess sometimes you have to use the labels because that's what people identify with, and it's easier to make your point. But I'm just saying, I don't like us and them, you know? No. It's like, we have to come together. And so I'm going to honor and respect the things that I agree with, and what I don't, I'm going to push back, and I'm going to do what I can to try to enlighten his administration, him, whoever I can reach, you know? But, and that's the way I try to do with everyone, because fundamentally, there's probably something in each individual you meet that you might agree on. And so stick with that. Find it. Heart connections, you know, like, be kind and give someone a compliment. Smile at them. Mother Teresa said, the greatest way to save the earth is by smiling at someone you otherwise wouldn't have. You know, someone's being a bee or being mean to you. Just smile, be kind back, and just like, I don't know. Where am I going with this? Am I just going off on it?
No, I know. You're reminding me, actually, I was reading this morning a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it was Saving the Planet. I can't remember what the title of the book is, but he was talking about during the Vietnam War, how each side was so dug in that if you were someone talking about peace, you could go to jail. You know,
where?
In Vietnam.
During the Vietnam. Okay.
Yeah, because like each side was like, no, there isn't, peace is not an option. Like, we're fighting this out
to the death.
Yeah, and so if you were someone who was speaking peace, then you were like a pariah, you know. And he made the point that if you take a side, you're safer because you're at least protected by that side. But if you try to be in the middle and try to advocate for peace and understanding and try to say that, you know, these people have some points, these people have some points, like, then you're at the most riskiest position, because both sides see you.
But you're also the most powerful because you have the potential to build allies on both sides, you know? So it's also the greatest position of power, I think, on some level, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think in a way, that's what he was saying, was that
Right.
like, by staying the course, and because his point is essentially the middle is where the truth is, because both of these sides are so twisted up in their own ideologies that they can't see their own failings, and they can't see where the other side might have some legitimacy,
And out of desperate need to preserve their identity because they base it on their beliefs and their thoughts, like they can't give credit or acknowledge something good from the other side because they feel threatened there. It's the core insecurity, I think.
Yeah, he says that that's though they're operating out of fear.
Yes.
And they are victims of themselves, essentially. And so this conversation just kind of reminded me of that. I was just reading that this morning. And I think there's a lot of people on both sides of the fence that just don't want to see the nuance, and they don't want to see the detail. It's all or nothing. Either we just completely ban oil today, or I won't be happy, which is not really a realistic or tenable,
it's not even possible
solution. Or on the other side, it's drill, baby, drill. And if you have anything to say about it, F you. And that's not really tenable or mature either, because there's real problems. Like your kids are being exposed to toxins. Doesn't that bother you? So we should be able to have a conversation where we aren't at those extremes. We're identifying and acknowledging the real problems that exist, and we're trying to solve those problems, because that's what a good society does.
Why can't it just be a little bit more balanced and a little bit more accepting of each other? And like, it is possible. We can all you can get along. Peace is possible. Peace exists, because we can have it within. So if I go out in the world and I'm, have inner peace, then everything that's going on is not going to disturb it. I have a central core, I'm concerned because, like this particular executive order is going to affect my community. I'm a 7th generation Ohio Valley resident. So I'm not giving up, and somehow, some way, through the heart, I just think eventually we'll find a better way to do this, to get our energy. And if we continue to reveal the truth of what it actually looks like, the radioactive risk part of it with the waste, I just think eventually we will find the solution and we will stop. And I don't know, is that naive? We can't drill, they can't drill indefinitely forever,
Yeah, it's for short-term gains. And that's how my personal opinion on the executive order and the administration is that that's where their mind's at, is that they're trying to open the tap for the next 4 years to make as much money as humanly possible on oil and gas. And, like you said, I'm kind of the same mindset. I'm not losing my mind over it. We had fracking. It's not like this invents like the Democrats were fracking too.
Yeah.
So it's just, we need to keep educating and not get so stupidly wrapped up in the toxic part of it, and just focus on the work that needs done, and educating people and trying to show people where the problems exist and offer ideas for solutions. That's all you can do.
And also, I want to offer community members, individuals, colleagues, just a place for people to come and share, their ideas, their thoughts, their experiences. And we all grow through that process, right?
Yeah.
Well, I really have a lot more I want to talk about. There's so much that's been going on, but I think we covered that pretty well? I learned a lot from you today, and I had read, you sent me the executive order, the day, inauguration day. Yeah. And so I've been processing it, and just like I said, I'm staying with anything is possible. Hearts and minds can be transformed. change is real and all we can count on. So
Yeah, and we'll get someone in here who really can dissect it.
yeah,
Who really knows the law.
this has just been helpful for me. So I hope others find value in this. But thank you. I really appreciate you kind of leading us in this way today. So
yeah, and as far as exposure goes for 2025, it should be an exciting year. We've been kind of making plans and things in behind the scenes for the last month and a half or so, and we're going to have some really good guests this year, and I hope people will stay tuned.
Yes, please do, and lots more to come, and we're kind of letting the creative energy flow and just opening things up, and effortless ease. Just let's go, ride the wave.
All right,
Peace.
sounds
Guidance
good.
and protection.
Bye.
Thank you.